Today's hearing was sort of conducted in two parts. First, we heard the witness testimony of a high-level official from the Department of Homeland Security, ICE. The witness was ordered to come and answer one very basic question, which is, if the country of Costa Rica has offered refugee status to Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and Kilmar Abrego Garcia has signed a form indicating that he is willing to accept deportation to Costa Rica to receive refugee status there, why hasn't that happened? Prior to today's hearing, the judge ordered that the witness be prepared to answer that question. And today, for the sixth time over the course of this litigation, the witness was unable to answer that question because the witness didn't even prepare. He just said, I talked to some folks at the State Department. They said we can't do it. I don't know why. I don't know what the basis of that. I don't know anything at all. So the fundamental question of why the government is insisting on protracted legal battles to send Mr. Abrego Garcia across the Atlantic Ocean to now 4 different African countries, when there is a Central American country that has already offered him refugee status. The central question goes unanswered yet again by the government, and it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth of retaliation. Right? I can't think of any reason why we're still fighting out this case, and why he's still behind bars in a detention center in Pennsylvania, when the government could have sent him to Costa Rica months ago, a country that has offered him protection. And Costa Rica, of course, is a country that has a long history of offered refugee status to people from throughout Latin America over the course of the past century. So we then turn to oral argument on the merits of the 2 issues in the case. One, have the procedures that the government afforded Mr. Abrego Garcia been sufficient under the Constitution? And then 2, can the government continue to keep him locked up? There's this issue in the case, which is that in 2019, when Mr. Abrego Garcia was still going through legal proceedings in front of an immigration judge in Baltimore, he received an order from an immigration judge granting him withholding of removal to El Salvador, essentially saying, you may not be deported to El Salvador because I find it's more likely than not that you're persecuted and tortured him. That, of course, was the order that was violated in March when he was sent to El Salvador anyway. But in any event, that order, was technically deficient, right? It didn't check all the boxes that it would have necessarily had to check to allow the government to remove him to any other country, because it didn't have a removal order attached to it. So a lot of the discussion today was about essentially, what if the judge determines, the government was saying, well, we should imply that there was a removal order there from context. And our argument, of course, is unless there's a piece of paper that says removal order, there's no removal order. And so a lot of the questions that the judge had was, well, what if I agree with you that there's no removal order? What's the context of that? What's the result of that? So the judge is going to issue her decision. Of course, as always, we don't have a timeline. The injunction preventing his removal stays in place while the judge issues her decision. And then if she grants the habeas corpus petition, which is to say she orders him released from ICE detention, she explained that she'll schedule another status conference to discuss whether the injunction against removal should be released. So there's a lot of different ways this could all end up, but we are confident that at the end of the day, the judge will find reason in our arguments that no matter what the government wants to keep doing with him at this point, they can't continue to keep him locked up unnecessarily while they try to do it. That, after all, at the end of the day, this is a habeas corpus petition. Habeas corpus is the great writ. It's mentioned in the Constitution. The writ of the habeas corpus shall not be suspended. And what habeas corpus is a challenge to detention. And so we're very, very hopeful that we will win a release from detention. And then what comes after that, I guess we'll all have to see.
May I ask you a question? The cross-examination of the witness today, were you, the people at home who could watch it, it sounds like your team was alleging this guy was put in this temp job simply to do what he was told, electronically sign this order, the language the State Department lawyers told him to use, having no idea anything about Mr. Abrego Garcia's case previously. Is that what you were? Is that what you believe?
Mr. Cantu was very candid with the court, and he had no qualms about admitting that he had no personal knowledge whatsoever, and that he was acting as a mouthpiece for a State Department lawyer who told him what to say. And he didn't pretend to have personal knowledge. He didn't pretend to know something that, you know, we then had to break him down in cross-examination and get him to admit that he didn't know it. He admitted candidly, even on direct examination from the government lawyer, Mr. Quinn, that he had no personal knowledge, and he was just writing down in a declaration what he was told to write down. And so, you know, we thank him and we appreciate that he was so candid with the court. And as a result of that, the court essentially explained that yet again, for the third time in court and the sixth time when it comes to 3 depositions, you know, witnesses who don't actually know anything, who are just repeating what they're told to say.
The judge said something about how she won't reach the motion to dissolve. Could you explain that, please?
Right now, there's an injunction prohibiting him from being removed from the United States. The government has requested that that injunction be lifted so that they can move him to Liberia or wherever, whatever fifth African country they come up with next. That injunction will now stay in place pending the decision on the habeas corpus, and then after the decision on the habeas corpus, there will be a status conference in which they'll decide whether to lift the injunction.
You can say in Spanish?
She said something about this could go both ways, seemingly indicating that if you restart the clock on his status, he could be sent to a fourth or, as you said, fifth country.
If the judge ultimately decides that he doesn't have a removal order, then he can't be removed unless and until they go back to immigration court. Essentially, it would be starting all over again in the manner that, you know, was done in 2019, right? They have to serve him with charging papers, take him before an immigration judge. You know, he'd have the opportunity to apply for asylum yet again. The problem that existed in 2019, that he did not apply for asylum within 1 year of arrival in the United States, would not exist, right? So he'd have an open path to apply for asylum in the United States. And, you know, we'd go from there and see what happens. It essentially it would wipe out everything, and we'd be starting again from square zero.
Can you explain why the judge focused a lot on her jurisdiction and how the final order of removal papers weigh heavily into her decision?
Yeah, I mean, the government's main argument in this case from day one has been, you know, whatever happens in the immigration system, whatever happens to him, whatever happens generally, federal district courts don't have anything to say about it. They don't have jurisdiction to tell the immigration authorities what they can and can't do, to review actions by the immigration authorities, to order immigration authorities to bring someone back, not to deport someone, et cetera, et cetera. So of course she has to take those arguments very seriously and determine whether she even has power to hear this case before deciding the case. So that's what is being referred to as the jurisdiction.
A couple of questions. Can you first speak to the last time you or anyone in your team spoke with Mr. Abrego Garcia, what his condition is now, how he's seeing all of this?
We're speaking with him on at least a weekly basis, sometimes more often than that, and he's, you know, he's quite anxious. I mean, it's the prospect of being sent to Liberia and then just being dumped there with, you know, being told that it'll be temporary. I think, you know, the word temporary can have a lot of different meanings, right? It could mean a week, it could mean a month, it could mean a year. But in any event, you know, it's very anxiety-producing. He's very anxious about the results of it.
And then just to follow up, we saw at the presser earlier this morning, this is a case about one man and whether his rights were violated. It has really come to represent the broader immigration crackdown we've seen from this administration. What does it mean to have Kilmar Abrego Garcia representing this particular moment, the politics around immigration in this country right now, when you're representing one man in one court?
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember that this is not something that Mr. Abrego Garcia chose, right? He didn't choose to become an activist. He didn't choose to become the face of the movement, right? He was snatched off the street when he was going to pick up his 5-year-old from daycare by surprise, and then he was put on a plane without being told where the plane was going, right? And then when he gets off the plane, he realizes he's in El Salvador, and then he's frog marched into the CCOT torture center where the first thing they did is forcibly shave his head and beat him all night, right? So this case has always been about the government's trying to prove that they can do whatever they want, whenever they want, to whomever they want, and judges in black robes have nothing to say about it. That's the legal principle that the government is trying to use this case to vindicate. And of course, the flip side of that coin is, our legal contention is that no, in fact, due process applies to all persons within the United States, whether citizen or non-citizen, whether they first entered legally or illegally, whether they have, asylum, or whether they just have a removal order, and withholding a removal or no removal order, that due process applies to all. That's been the legal principle that we're trying to vindicate through this case.
Can I ask a totally regular person question? This is not the first hearing like this where I've heard this judge be really angry and rip the government apart. But if you have kids, you can't. If there's no consequence, they're just going to keep doing it. And she kept saying, "We told you, I told you, got to have somebody here," and then they didn't send the right witness again and again. And today I was shocked that they said enough. Is there any recourse for the court? Is there any sort of consequence is it considered defying a judge's order? She said, bring a witness who can say this, and then they bring a witness who can't?
Yeah, we filed a motion for sanctions and contempt in the first litigation, the case that was filed sort of immediately after he was first removed from El Salvador. That motion is still pending. I think the judge has very reasonably decided, let me deal with the emergency issues before me about, does this man need to stay locked up, or, can I order his release? Is this man going to get deported to Liberia, or can I keep him in the United States? I think the judge has very reasonably decided to sort of take those issues up first. But she did mention today that she is cognizant of the fact that there's a sanctions and contempt motion still.
Please, you can say the Spanish statement.
El día de hoy, por literalmente sexta vez en este caso, llegó un oficial del Departamento de Seguridad Interna que no supo decir nada sobre la cuestión fundamental en este caso, que es lo siguiente. Si Costa Rica le haya ofrecido a Kilmar Abrego Garcia estatus de refugiado, que es un estatus permanente, de protección permanente, y Kilmar Abrego Garcia ya firmó un formulario diciendo que está dispuesto de aceptar que le deporten a Costa Rica. Entonces, ¿por qué estamos aquí todavía peleando que si lo pueden deportar a allá el cuarto país africano, que es Liberia? ¿Por qué estamos todavía peleando esto? ¿Por qué el hombre sigue detenido tras las rejas en un centro de detención en Pensilvania si ya lo podrían haber deportado a Costa Rica hace meses ya? Y el oficial del gobierno no supo contestar eso, no tuvo ninguna respuesta a esa pregunta. Entonces la jueza dijo que probablemente hoy es la última audiencia ante esta corte y va a determinar el caso de una vez. Obviamente no tenemos fecha para cuál va a ser su decisión, y esas no son cosas que vienen de un día para otro ni de una semana para otra, pero vamos a tener finalmente una decisión sobre las dos cuestiones en este caso. Uno, si pueden deportar a una persona a un país que completamente desconoce, sin ni siquiera un juez de inmigración tener nada que ver con el caso, si simplemente lo pueden deportar a Liberia, África, de una manera administrativa, sin proceso judicial. Y dos, si él tiene que seguir detenido o si puede salir libre y regresar a Maryland, donde le está esperando su esposa, que es ciudadana estadounidense, su hijo nacido acá, si él puede regresar con su familia. Entonces, esto es la decisión que vamos a tener de la presidencia.
¿Cuáles son las expectativas? ¿Cómo vio usted, por ejemplo, a los funcionarios del gobierno?
Bueno, vamos a ver qué es lo que decide, pero yo tengo mucha confianza de que la jueza va a reconocer de que pase lo que el gobierno puede hacer muchas cosas con él, pero no tienen que mantenerlo detenido mientras pelean todo esto. Entonces, vamos a ver qué es lo que decide.
Lo de las habeas corpus, ¿cuándo lo van a solicitar? Habeas corpus. ¿Lo van a solicitar o van a solicitar
Estamos aquí bajo un procedimiento de habeas corpus.
Perfecto.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.